Do you feel like the light of the world? We have a liturgical problem. Last week we celebrated the feast of the presentation of the Lord on Sunday, which means we displaced the readings for the Sunday with the readings for the feast. So we didn't hear what preceded this gospel because it was directly following. And as you know, we're reading Matthew this year, and we read right straight through. Almost every Sunday we'll have a consecutive reading from Matthew. And Matthew was writing for Jewish people, Jewish Christians. And last week we heard, or should have heard, Jesus went up on the mountain, sat down, and began to preach to the people. And for the Jewish person, that image of Jesus going up the mountain would have been a flashback. Moses went up the mountain, met God, came down and gave the people the new way of life in the covenant which God established with them, what we call the Ten Commandments. So here's Jesus going up the mountain and not meeting God, because as we know and believe, he was God himself become one of us. He sits down in the position of a teacher and gives us the commandments of the new creation, the new covenant, which are not the 10, but the Beatitudes, the 8. Jesus did not come to call us to keep the 10 Commandments. In a certain sense, we just take them for granted. But the Beatitudes, if you will, as you used to say, ups the ante. We are called to live a more godlike life than just merely not killing each other, not stealing from each other. And this, when Jesus says to us, his disciples, you are the light of the world, this is what he's talking about. If we are living the beatitudinal life, if we are living in the new covenant, as he calls us to, then we are shedding light on the world. Don't forget, light in itself is not that important. It's what happens when the light comes. I get up here in the morning and I look out all these windows, I see nothing. It's total darkness. But as the light gradually increases, I begin to see trees, and then finally the sun breaks through and you see every detail, every color, everything is visible. And that's what Jesus is talking about. If we are living the life in the new covenant, we are going to illuminate the world for the sake of others. We don't have to preach to others. We have to live for God in a way that others will perceive and then see. This is the call of a Christian. Christ is the light of the world. The light that we have to share with our contemporaries is reflected light. It's the light which comes from Christ through us to our world. When he walked among us, he didn't need reflected light. He was the light of the world to all who met him. But he's no longer walking among us in that way, except in the reflected light that you and I are transferring to our world. When people see us living a life in Christ, they are drawn to the light like a moth to a candle. But they're not drawn to us. They're drawn to Christ. And it doesn't mean that we have to become preachers. We have to become livers. People who live the life of the new covenant as described by Jesus in the 8 Beatitudes. Later on in life, for us dummies, he said it more clearly. He said, "A new commandment I give you. Love each other in the same way that I have loved you." And that's what it means to be a light for the world. The light we give, we won't even realize, as long as we're loving as we have been called to love in Christ. And if you sometimes think your flame, as it does, our flame becomes rather dim, we rekindle it by coming together to experience the light of the world in Jesus in the Eucharist or in the Word, or in our daily encounter with Him in prayer. The flame will always be enkindled as long as we permit it to be. But it's not for our sake, it's for our world, Christ's world.